I guess you've probably all seen the news this afternoon that the last two candidates which will be put to the vote of the Tory party membership are Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick. So what that tells you is that the Tory MPs decided that it would be a good idea to eliminate James Cleverly. Now, I don't accept these categories for a moment, but commonly seen as the nearest to a centrist Tory left in the race. I mean, there aren't actually many centrist Tories left in the Tory party, but the Tory MPs, who were the electorate in this case, eliminated the only person seen as a centrist candidate and have left to the Tory party membership, who are even more right-wing than Tory MPs, Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick. Now, these are the Godzilla and King Kong of the far right of the Tory party. These are people who hate Muslims, hate anything that they don't regard as British culture. Robert Jenrick, who is probably the more dangerous, if not the more publicly obnoxious of the two, in the course of his election campaign, suggested that the Star of David ought to be erected on every single border entry point to the United Kingdom. I'm not even sure that the Union Jack is at every single border point entering the United Kingdom. That people shouting Allah Akbar in the streets ought to be arrested, and that 2 of the 5 national organisations who've been organising the Palestinian marches ought to be banned and their leadership arrested for extremism. However, he thinks he might define that, which wouldn't involve him and Kemi Badenoch. So I say this because although it's obviously an internal fight in the Tory party, which is a very big majority away from ever being the government, it matters in terms of where the political spectrum is going. Because we all know that one of the outcomes of the general election was to empower Nigel Farage and reform. We know that in the extra parliamentary spheres, I'm sure Wayne will tell us, there is Tommy Robinson and the mobilisations that he's had recently. So there is, and if we weren't cognizant of this, the far right riots in the summer made it plain enough. There is a very big far right constituency spread across an extra parliamentary right, a parliamentary right which involves reform, and now very likely the entire leadership of the Tory party. And that matters because although they're a very long way from being able to topple the Labour government, they will, as they always have done, as Farage's modus operandi has always been, to drag the political spectrum in its entirety to the right. And Keir Starmer, as we know, is not in the least bit reticent about going there as well. And he won't just go there, as the first 100 days of his administration have shown on questions of racism and Islamophobia. He will go there on absolutely core questions to do with working people's wages, conditions and welfare in this country. It's quite something for somebody who has a reputation at being good at a certain type of politics, at a certain type of PR, in your first 100 days to become best known for taking fuel payments away from poor pensioners and taking child benefit away from poor parents. It takes a really special kind of Labour leader to make yourself famous at the beginning of a government where you have a whacking great big majority to do that. And his personal ratings, of course, have fallen like a lead balloon in that period. Now, less popular than Rishi Sunak as a Prime Minister. And that goes back to the election result itself. Although they got a very big parliamentary majority, they didn't get a very big popular vote. It was, as many people have called it, a loveless landslide. A loveless landslide because they got a lower proportion of the popular vote than Jeremy Corbyn got, not only in 2017, but in the so-called disastrous, catastrophic election result in 2019 as well. Keir Starmer, in his own constituency, got less votes than he got when Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party. The one thing which they continue to know how to do is to witch hunt the left and to turn on working people. And I say all this because it underlines the necessity of building a renewed mass anti-austerity movement. It is going to be, if there's one certainty in British politics, it is going to be that we are going to need a movement like that. Rachel Rees has been crystal clear, beyond all measure of doubt about what she's going to do in the budget. Every day that passes, the flagged up attempts to dress up what she was doing by taxing the rich are struck off the list of things that she's going to do in the budget, and the things that remain are the attacks on welfare and on working people. The privatisation agenda has not been abandoned and won't be abandoned in the National Health Service. Under West Streeting, it will have rockets tied to it. So we have a big task, but we also have some resources of strength. I don't think that everything that could have been got out of the mass strikes was got out of the mass strikes, but some important gains were made. Some attacks on working people that would have been worse were turned aside. Some of the weight of those strikes, which didn't manifest themselves when the Tories were in power, did have an impact on the incoming Labour government. I think Starmer took a decision that perhaps it would be best if a deal could be made which quietened down organised Labour while they got on with the business of attacking unorganised Labour through welfare cuts. Some of that residual strength remains. Some of the enormous, and it is historic, the Palestine movement. You would have to go back a very, very long way in British history to see a series of mass mobilisations of this scale, on this stamina, over an entire year. I don't know, there isn't a single demonstration that was bigger than Iraq, but the demonstrations as a whole are a bigger movement than the Iraq was. I think you'd have to go back to the 70s, perhaps to the suffragettes, perhaps even back to the Chartists to see a sustained movement on this scale. And those people are not just revolting. The engine of that is not just solidarity with the Palestinians. I believe you cannot explain why 66% of people in this country are in favour of the Palestinians, why 57% want a total arms embargo on arms sales to Palestine, without understanding what it is that it touches in British people. And it's not that they aren't the vast majority of those millions of people, the vast majority even of the people who come on the demonstration, the millions that come on the demonstration, they aren't themselves Palestinians. They aren't Arabs, they aren't Muslims, they aren't Jews, they aren't identity politics attached to the Palestinian cause. What they see, and what has always been part of British working class history, is when they see a boot on somebody's neck, they sympathise with the person under the boot and not with the person stamping on their neck. When they see a boy confronting a tank, they sympathise with the boy, not the tank. When they see somebody's house reduced to rubble, they sympathise with the person under the rubble, not the person bombing them. And they do that because somewhere deep in their hearts, they know that the people doing this to Palestinians would also do it to them. Boris Johnson said, let the bodies pile high. He wasn't talking about Palestinians, he was talking about us during the COVID crisis. And he let 170,000 people in this country in a few months die. Now that stands with the 42,000 Palestinians that have been killed by the Israelis. People recognise that there is a deeply unequal society, that there is a vicious, unrepentant ruling class in this country, which would devastate the lives of working people here as quickly and as easily as they will devastate the lives of Palestinians, and that's why they turn out. And that energy, I believe, can and will manifest itself again when working people find their rights, their health service, their ability to organise, their wages, their standard of living under attack.